I want to master the craft of cinematography. But the only way to get there is to keep creating. So today, I'm sharing the process of how we created this short horror scene. I'm going to break down exactly how I lit this frame, from the specific light ratios to the tricks I used to get zero noise in the image, and I'll show you how we created that monster hand. This is the video where I show you how I approach low light cinematography. First, I chose the direction and the angle. This angle worked best. We have plenty of depth and we can use the window to create a fake moonlight. I'm shooting this on Sony ZV-E1 with Sigma 24-70. I wanted to stay at around 35mm, but more importantly, I chose the aperture of f4. I just like how it looks on 35mm lens and it helps me get more things in the focus. Let's move to the lights, and here we have the first problem. My room is on the 3rd floor, which means I can only place my light on the balcony. Usually when creating natural moonlight or sunlight, you want the light source as far away from the window as possible. Obviously, in this case, that wasn't possible. First, I will show you where I placed all of the main lights, and later I will fine-tune the details. I placed an aperture 600x outside. All of the lights will be set to 5600 Kelvin, while my camera is going to be at 4500 Kelvin. For me, that's the sweet spot for creating that moonlight feel. It gives you this grayish, bluish, I don't know, feel. Alright, so the first light is on. The window is a bit bright, but I like where the room tone is sitting. But this is just the first sacrifice that I have to make. If I pull down on the light too much, then I lose some of the room details that I like. Most of the time, I light the space first, and once I'm happy with it, I move on to the main subjects. In that way, I'm lighting more for the place rather than the people's faces. I think that you can get more natural results that way. Right now, let's focus on the face that is way too dark, so let's fix this first. Let's add more light to the face by motivating the moonlight. I'm bringing in the Nightlight Power Slim 120B, again at 5600 Kelvin. By the way, this is by far my favorite light. I use it for music videos, short films, commercials. It's just so practical. I highly recommend you get one. Nightlight, please sponsor me. Alright, to create a soft light and a nice wrap, you need a big light source and you need to position it as close to the subject as possible. First, I added a grid to control the spill because I didn't want light hitting this side of the bed. But the downside is that the grid can make the light less wrappy. To fix this, I place a cheap 5-in-1 Godox reflector in front of the power slip. This creates a larger source for a softer look, even though it adds a bit of light to the pillow where I didn't want it. But yeah, this is low-budget filmmaking, so it's all about the compromises. As I said before, I'm shooting this on the Sony ZV-E1. It has the same sensor as the FX3, and you know how everybody says that the FX3 is the king of the low light because it has 12,800 ISO? That may be true, but you will still get noise if you're filming a dark, moody image and you aren't doing it properly. In my case, I'm using ISO 800 here, so keep watching and I'll show you how to avoid the noise. In a scenario like this, I'm looking for 4 things: the window, the key side of the face, the fill side of the face, and the whole room. Let's look at the false color on the monitor. The window is around 50 to 70 IRE, the key side of the face is at 30 to 40 IRE, the fill side of the face is around 10 IRE, and the room is around 25 IRE. Alright, so now let's move to the ratios. If you want to build a natural looking frame, I think that ratios are very important. The ratio between the window and the key side is roughly 8:1 or 10:1. While false color isn't as precise as a light meter at calculating ratios, I think that it's good enough to get close to what we want. Since the subject is far from the window, it feels natural for the skin to be a bit darker. In this case, I'm actually exposing the skin slightly lower than it's the recommended IRE levels, because I want to keep that low-key look, and for me, this just looks better. Now, as you can see, I actually dialed in the exact ratios using a light meter. I won't cover full light meter process here because it's a bit much for one video, but if you want to see exactly how I use it to create the final image, I've posted a video on my Patreon. In that video, I'll talk about how I expose and how I tune in the ratios using a light meter. I show the exact values and how I work with them. There, I'm also dropping a breakdown on how I shot the second frame. You can support the channel there and unlock more of my content. But for now, let's move back to the false color and to the trick that helps me remove the noise. Alright, so my key to fill ratio on the face is currently too high, around 32:1 or even 64:1. The blacks are completely crushed. Right from the start, I wanted to shape the shadows in a way where you could still see the face. For a horror style video, I could have easily left it much darker. But I really wanted to practice this specific scenario where we maintain some details in the shadows. I don't mind some deep shadows here and there, but I need more detail on the face. To fix this, I'm bouncing a Nanlite Mirror 60C off the white wall behind me to add a kicker into the shadows. This is much closer to where I want to be. So when we look at the image right now, we could say, alright, this image is complete. It looks great. Well, yes and no. Some parts of the face are actually below 20 IRI, which means we will definitely get some noise there. So what can we do when we know that the image will generate noise? Well, here's the trick. I wanted the final look to be at aperture f4. However, I lit and metered the entire scene at aperture f5.6. Now I open my aperture to f4 for the actual recording, which means I've just lifted the entire image by one stop of light. The whole frame becomes brighter, but the ratios stay the same. I'm just capturing more information in the shadows. Later in post-production, I can pull down the whole image by one stop and I will get the image that I was looking for the whole time at f5.6, but it's now recording at f4 and I don't have the noise. Just be careful here, because when you go from, I don't know, like in my case, from f5.6 to f4, you're not only lifting the shadows, but you're also lifting the highlights. And remember, in the highlights, you also need the information, because you're pulling whole image back down later. By the way, the grain you see was added afterward with the Dehancer plugin. This is with and without the grain. Now you may be asking yourself, are you doing all of that work to remove noise only to add grain back in later? Yes, digital noise and simulated film grain are not the same thing. I want my digital footage to be as clean as possible before I start messing with it in post-production. By the way, this whole frame, this video and pretty much everything I do is color graded with the Dehancer. I'm not a master colorist, but when I grade with Dehancer, I just really get the results I like. If you want to, you can check it out in the description and use code Thomas10 for 10% off and try it out yourself. So now you know. Now you know how I lit everything, what were my ratios, what is my hack to reduce the noise. So for the end, I would like to show you a little bit of the behind the scenes, how Lucia created this monster hand using latex and other materials. This whole project was very fun. And in case you're asking how I created this sliding shot, I just put my tripod on the towels and just push it. If you like my work, if you like what I do, I will appreciate you subscribing. As I said before, I have my Patreon when you can support me, and I will absolutely do more of this shit because it's fun. Alright, so thank you again and see you in the next one. Bye.